I'm bestselling author Brian W. Smith, and you're watching Amplified Exposure Live with Teresa B. Let's get it. Keep shining, let it shine like a diamond. Keep shining, let it shine like a diamond.
Good evening, Facebook. This is your girl, Teresa B, coming to you live from Amplified Exposure Live. And today I have my wonderful guest and mentor, Miss Jacqueline Thomas. She is an author of over 85. I think I'm starting to lose count. It might be over 95 books.
No. No.
And she is doing some extraordinary things. And I happen to know her personally, and she has mentored me through my book process. So she came on today, not just because she's the most ultimate mentor in the world. She came on today because she likes me. So for those in La La Land, TV Land, Roku Land, and all the other lands, listen up. We got 30 minutes of good stuff. 30 minutes of good stuff. I think I said it right. How you doing, Miss Thomas? How are you?
I am doing fine. It's a new day, a new year. I'm doing fine.
Well, you are looking beautiful.
Thank you. Thank you. So are you. So are you.
Thank you. So for those of you that are out there, if you know anything about literature and if you're a reader, Miss Jacqueline Thomas writes her face off. Like she can write a book within 2 months tops, and before you know it, it's like on the bestseller list. It's number one. So she's been writing forever and a day, and she's best known for a book called Jezebel that came out. That also was that turned into a movie as well.
No, it was optioned, but it hasn't been turned into a movie. Actually, my best-selling book is actually The Prodigal Husband, and I just re-released that last week. Yeah, that's actually the number one. Jezebel's number two.
Oh man, I thought I knew what I was talking about.
Well, you did kind of, sort of.
So, Prodigal Son, is there a movie?
Prodigal Husband.
Prodigal Husband. Okay. Mm-hmm. Is there a movie that might be coming out?
It was optioned as well, but no, but we're open to any opportunities. It's a story that I really believe in. It came out originally like in 2000, and I re-released it, like I said, last week, along with the sequel, Defining Moments. Okay. And Prodigal Husband, Defining Moments, and Jezebel are my three probably favorite books. I really enjoyed writing them. So they're dear and dear to my heart.
Okay. And how long did it take you to finish those two?
Probably about 6 months for them. Jezebel, it took, I would probably say a little bit longer just because of the history that I put it, the research that I needed to do for the history, because Jezebel opens in like the 1970s, which I was like a teenager, but you know, you want to be authentic about that time and space. And it spans, I want to say, a good 30, 40 years.
Okay. So tell the audience, for those that haven't read Jezebel, because that was one of my favorites. Can you talk a little bit about the story? Just a little bit.
Well, Jezebel is based on Queen Jezebel in the Bible. And Queen Jezebel, if you're not familiar with Queen Jezebel, she, well, first, most people in the South, when they because my grandmother was one of those women, when you would come to church, if you wore like a red dress or you had your arms out like this, you know, they would like, oh, that Jezebel, you know. And so I grew up thinking Jezebel was a loose woman, you know, that she was just, you know, a tramp. And when I read the Bible, what I realized is that was nothing. It was not even close, that she was hungry for power. And so, you know, we get that term, a Jezebel spirit. And so I did an in-depth study on the Jezebel spirit. and found out that it's mostly found in the church. It's not necessarily a woman. A man can also have the Jezebel spirit. So my book actually deals with a young woman, Jezebel, which is a play on Jezebel, and she wants her husband to be at that time the next Billy Graham. TD
Okay.
Jakes wasn't there yet. So she felt he was very gifted, and she did everything in her power instead of waiting on God to move. She moved. If that meant blackmail, if that meant, whatever, she did whatever she could to make sure her husband moved up in the ministry and everything. And, as in the Bible, Queen Jezebel fell literally to her death. And so Jezebel has a similar downfall.
Jezebel.
Yeah.
How creative. And so you've been known to write books in several different genres. You just don't stick
Yes.
like, for me, I'm just Christian fiction right now, but you have like Christian fiction, you have
Mainstream fiction. I have romance, and I also have young adult. But the
young
one
adult.
thing that is consistent, regardless of what genre that I work in, they're all, there's no profanity, no gratuitous sex. I kind of fade to black when it comes to those love scenes. So I should say there is sex in my books, but I fade to black. You have to kind of imagine it in your head. I'm a very visual person. And when I'm writing, I see these scenes in my head. So there's just certain things I don't want to know about my characters.
Right, right. And that's something that we also discussed when you was mentoring me through the writing process about how to leave that visualization for the reader and not necessarily have to spell everything out. And so I actually tried that on my last book that I wrote. And one of the people that were out there made a comment about how tasteful it was because I didn't say all that stuff. So I appreciate you for that tip. Because, when I first started writing, I was like, you already know.
Well, there are differing opinions when it comes to that. But for me, my writing is a ministry for me. I know what God has given me and put in my spirit. And so I have to write what he's given me. And my rule of thumb is if he were to step down from heaven right now and say, let me read Jezebel, I want to stand here and not say, Father, you might want to miss chapter 18, chapter 42. You might not want to read those because I don't think I could stand there, and face the Father.
Right.
So it's a personal choice for me. I'm not condemning anybody who may put gratuitous scenes in their books. My belief system's a little bit different. So there are different opinions. So I wanted to put that out there that this is Jackie's belief system for Jackie.
Well, Jackie's belief system worked for me because I would change everything. So I appreciate you for teaching me the ropes and spending all those hours with me, helping me write my books. You are truly a gem. So for those of you who have not read Jacqueline Thomas, or you just coming in and you're just seeing who's on the screen, Jacqueline Thomas is a phenomenal writer, and she just had a release. You just had 2 books come out.
Yes, I dropped them last week. Again, they're re-releases, The Prodigal Husband, the sequel to The Prodigal Husband, Defining Moments. And I'm really thrilled about Defining Moments because my daughter graces the cover. I wanted to give a tribute to her. And so having her on that cover it makes it all the more special for me. And next month, I will be dropping the final book in that series that was never published before. So I'm excited about that as well. And it's Unexpected Serenity. Those who read the first 2 books, this book would pick up from Defining Moments.
Okay. And she looks beautiful on the cover, by the way. I love the cover of that book. It was very pretty. So when you talk about writing, because we had this discussion also, are you a pantster or are you an outliner?
I am an outliner. I cannot function. I would feel schizophrenic if I didn't outline. I do a major outline then I do separate outlines for the characters because I need to know their stories in and out. For example, what their issues are, because we all have some type of issue, and so I really, really want to know what my characters' issues are. What are their flaws? What are their emotional wounds? So I really delve deep into my characters, and I guess you can say that's a form of character bios. But I take it a step further because I actually do a whole psychological profile on them.
Right. Yeah, I didn't do that either until I met you. Yeah, I'm just saying.
You have to know what they will and won't do. You have to make your characters authentic. And I think that is a strength for me, that I write three-dimensional realistic characters. But I think a lot of that I credit to, studying psychology, getting a master's in psychology, at one point thinking about going to become a psychologist. And then I got sick of school. So
yeah. Let's talk about studying, because you said that too one time about how people don't study their characters or what they're writing about, and then it becomes it's not.
Well, they don't do enough research. That is the thing, is what I see sometimes. People don't, and they may not know how. But research is important. You don't just throw something in a book and go with what you think For example, with a character who's bipolar, we know overall the stereotypical symptoms of bipolarism, but it goes much deeper than that. And so I think that you should dig a little bit deeper. And because what it means is they don't just, they have these very, very highs or these very, very lows. There's kind of no in between, but what triggers them? You see what I mean? You need to know what those triggers are in order to write this character. If she's about, or he or she is about to have an episode, you need to know what that trigger is.
Right.
So it's just about doing research. And I learned that very early in my career writing romance, because I wrote this book and I talked about it raining in 18 something. And somebody wrote me and said that it did not rain on that day. that I should check the almanac.
Oh wow. And they will give it to you straight, won't they? They don't sugarcoat.
Yes, and outside of me being in my feelings, like, okay, that person had nothing else to do, but I learned a very important lesson. You see what I'm saying? So I learned to really research. And if I don't, I'll include an author's note. For example, in Defining Moments, Sheila's mother speaks Gullah. Well, I grew up in those islands and everything, so I'm familiar with the language, but trying to translate it to paper was not, I couldn't do it. I did the best I could. So I put an author's note that I took creative license with the language.
Okay.
Because I know it wasn't exact. And there's someone who probably speaks Gullah that will say, and I'm like, no, I took creative license with it.
Yeah.
And plus, I wanted to keep it simple for the reader. I didn't want to throw the reader off. So when we do things like that, it's just a little note to say, hey, I just want you to know I took creative license with this. And, because then that lets the reader know, okay, well, she knows that, and I mean, it's fiction.
It's fiction. I've been dinged for the smallest thing, kind of like you were talking about. It was a bingo, because I don't really know bingo. So I had like a letter that wasn't even in.
Okay, now you might not want to share that secret.
Hey, it was like, I don't know. It was Shavana. Shavana actually caught it. She was like, you might need to go play bingo.
Yes.
It's very important that you research and you know what you're writing about, because
exactly. And even like you said with bingo, look it up online. How do you play bingo? Even if you think sometimes I think I know something and I still go back and check it out. Check it out.
Right.
For example, I grew up with my father being a Marine. I was around nothing but Marines. And so I felt like I had a good understanding of Marines, you know.
Hmm.
And when I did this, my book that comes out in February of next year, I had to go back and research a lot of stuff about Marines because I couldn't rely on just what I knew watching my father and being on base and, being around nothing but Marines, my godfather being a Marine. I couldn't rely just on that. I had to go back and research some things.
Right. Right. So when did you start writing? When did you know that you were going to be a writer?
Well, I wrote a story when I was in third grade, and it was about I lived on St. Simon's Island in Brunswick, Georgia, growing up, and just on the island. I loved the island, loved being on the beach. That was always my place. It still is my place of my happy place. Let me say that. And
Right.
I wrote about a girl at the beach, and she just kind of walked into the water. I didn't think anything about it. It was what I saw in my head, and I didn't think anything about it. Well, my teacher was a bit concerned, and so was the principal and everybody. So they wanted to know where that story came from. And I'm like, I just saw it in my head. And they said, well, what happened to her? I don't know. She just went into the ocean. But now I realize they probably thought it was suicide. For me, she just disappeared into the ocean. As far as I'm
Mhm.
concerned, she became a mermaid. I don't know. But it wasn't about suicide. And so it was my third grade teacher that she felt like I had this gift because of the way that I wrote that story. And
Mhm.
the girl was sad, but I couldn't tell her why. I just know what I saw. And so she basically took me to my very first book signing. Miss Applin, she encouraged my writing over the years. I wrote my first book at 16 when my first boyfriend kind of dumped me from my best friend. And I came home and I killed him in a story, cut him into like 8 pieces and spread him all over New York. And
No,
it felt good. It felt
no,
so
Miss Jackie, no.
good. I'm sorry. Secrets out. I have a violent side. But it was very cathartic. It was very cathartic for me. And so what I realized was that writing was the voice that I didn't have because I was really shy. I didn't really talk to a lot of people. And so
Mhm.
it was a struggle for me. It was a struggle
Right.
for me to, because I really was not a people person. And people responded not in great ways. Some thought I thought I was better, whatever, high school stuff. But anyway,
Yeah.
it wasn't that. It was that I was just such an introvert and I preferred my own company to anybody else's. And
Mhm.
so writing was my way of communicating with the world. So that's kind of it still is. I have to kind of you know, um, force myself to be out among people. Although now with this pandemic, I'm so people deprived. And I said it's bad when I want to be around people, because this has just been interesting. And, like I say, normally I love my space, but now I'm sick of my space. I want to be around people, I
Yeah.
want to talk to live people.
Yeah, I said the same thing. And my child being in middle school, it's like it's hard when you don't have any friends and anyone to talk face to face. Like it really makes a difference in your life when you have socialization. So
Yes.
we always try so hard to stay away from people, but now we're like, oh, where are the people at?
Yes, yes. It's like as soon as this is over, I just want to go hug people. I'm sure I'm sure that will change quickly, but I just I just miss people. Um,
Yeah.
this is great. We have now this technology that we're able to, communicate, but like, my father-in-law, you know, we miss him, we haven't seen him, my kids, I see them not as often as I would love, especially after everything that's happened. I kind of just want to hold on to them. So
Yeah.
it's just not it's good, but this has been challenging. And so I've been writing to try to just stay busy.
Right. Right. Well, you're doing a successful job at it because all these books are popping out. You are definitely busy. So,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, you're
I, I
doing the thing.
didn't have anything come out last year, so I think that was part of it too. I didn't have a book, and normally I don't go a year without one or two books coming out. So this year I've got the three that I'm doing independently, and then the in May my book with Harlequin will release May 25th. So I'll release that book, and then we'll see what else is coming.
So, how did you go from chopping up the boyfriend in the book to romance novels?
Well, my mother was a reader, and my mother reads across the board, and I'm a lot like her in that we just love a good book. And so my mother had romance novels, she had horror books, she had mysteries, and when I ran out of my books at the library, because I think back then they limited you to like three.
Mm-hmm.
Now you can, but back then I think you could pick out like three books. Well, I could read
Right.
those in a week, and so I'm sneaking in her room, to go get books to read. And so I fell in love with romance just reading her books. And actually, it was the romance books. I love the way that the men treated their women. And so when I started to date, if a man didn't treat me the same way, he was not long for dating me because I wanted to be wined and dined and treated like those women in the romance novels. You know,
Right.
a lot of people call it fluff or whatever, but it taught me a lot about relationships and what I
Mhm.
expected. And I set that tone for my life, and now I am married to my prince, my what do we call him, my black knight. And we will celebrate 30 years of marriage. And so it's been a
Wow.
wonderful, wonderful ride. So
Congratulations.
yes.
Congratulations. Well, for my next husband, I'm 30 years. How about that?
Yes, definitely. Sometimes we have to do it twice to get it right. You
Okay. Yeah. I'm a
Been there,
believer.
done that. Been there, done that. But
Yeah.
I found him the second round, and again, he's absolutely wonderful. He is my rock, and actually, he motivates a lot or inspires a lot of the stories that I tell in my romance novels.
Right, right. So when you first wrote that first book and you started the romance novels and all the things that you had going on, how did you get published? Because a lot of people are so into trying to find the difference between a publisher and doing it on their own as an indie. Tell us about that experience.
Well, for me, it was not difficult at that time. I knew that I didn't feel like I had the skill set to self-publish, even though I mean I come from a corporate business background, and I was in management in corporate America, a pharmaceutical company. I could run a company, but I just did not feel like I could sell my own books because
Right,
again, an introvert in me, I could write the stories, but trying to do them, put them out myself and all of that, I was never a salesperson, and
right,
so I just didn't want to do that. So I actually went to Romance Writers of America to their conference. When I finished my book, I just had my son. And so I finished the book while I was on bed rest. I was on bed rest for 5 months with him. So I
okay,
wrote my first adult book during that time. And, I went to this conference not knowing what to expect. I met Donna Hill, who is phenomenal, Frances Ray, Beverly Jenkins, and I read their books. So, of course, I was fangirling. And
hmm
Donna Hill, I think, was the one that asked me if I met their editor, Monica Harris. And I said no. Well, Donna sneaks off. She goes and she gets this appointment for me with Monica. And so I'm sitting here like, what am I supposed to do with this? You know,
hmm
they worked with me, and Francis, her and Francis, they helped me kind of get together my pitch for the next day. So I met with the editor the next day. I flubbed the pitch, but she still asked to see my book. I was so nervous, and I couldn't remember what I was supposed to say, but she was so sweet, and she's like, just breathe and calm down. and she asked to see the manuscript. And then 19 weeks later, I got the call. And I just the week before got my agent. So I got the agent the week before, and then I got the offer. So it just kind of worked out really easy for me. Now I independently publish some of my books, and
Mhm.
I'm fine with it, but I still prefer traditional publishing. I know a lot of people like the indie side of things. I don't. I prefer the traditional, and not for any reason other than it becomes overwhelming for me. And
Yeah.
I suffer from chronic panic disorder. And so because of that, I have to manage my triggers and my stress.
Right. And
Yeah.
at least you know what triggers it and what, because a lot of people haven't really researched within to know how to handle those types of situations. So kudos to you for that. But I just love you. I just y'all. Miss Jackie is so sweet. If anybody is out there, let me see who's out there because there's a lot of people that are leaving comments. King Brooks, um, he wanted me to ask you about your workshop that's coming up.
Oh, yes. On the 18th of March, I have a 4-week workshop, which is happening every Thursday for 4 weeks. And we're talking about basically the elements of fiction and what that entails. And it's very interactive where they're going to be working on their works in progress. And I'm really excited about that. It'll be the only workshop I'll be able to do this year. I wasn't going to do any, but I had a lot of people inboxing me and asking me, actually for the last couple of years, when I was going to do another workshop. So I was like, okay, let me go on and do this workshop because, I love working with writers. That's my other love is seeing authors give birth to their own stories. I'm like a proud GMA.
Well, I thank you for being my GMA because you're my GMA too. Let's see, who else do we have out here? Sharon Elise is laughing at us. She said, um, Marshall Cecil said hello. Alicia Sandler said hello.
Oh,
And she
hello,
said,
everybody.
yeah. So we have a couple of people that we know in common, and hopefully this broadcast will spread throughout distribution to where we can gain more people to know how special you are as a writer and as a person because you are truly a gem. So I want to thank you for coming on my show because who knew I would be doing shows after you mentored me? Who knew that?
I'm not surprised. I will be honest with you. I'm not surprised. I've watched your career just kind of blossom, and I'm so happy for you. Again, it's always wonderful when you see authors just kind of take off. You know what I mean? And that's what you're doing. And I say just soar. Just soar.
Thank you.
I may catch up, I may not, but I'm okay either way.
Don't make me cry, Miss Jackie. Don't make me cry. Thank you.
No. No, that's the last thing we want to do. We don't want to cry right now.
Well, thank you so much for coming on my show. I really, really,
For
really
having me.
talking to you. And for those of you that are out there, she has some new books that have that's coming. Well, that has come out in the last couple of weeks that are they've been redone. Correct? Is that
Yes, these are reprints, but the third one, which will drop next month, is brand new.
And that name of that is
Unexpected Serenity.
Unexpected Serenity. So be looking out for Unexpected Serenity and go check out Miss Jacqueline's books. She has a lot of them.
And
Over
also,
85.
Also, I have a brand new website. So if they will stop by my website, sign up for my newsletter. I have a new private Facebook group called the Champagne Lounge. And we're also having our first game night March 19th. And we're also celebrating my birthday. So, but you have to be a member of the club, the lounge, to join us.
All right. Well, I need to join. And happy pre-birthday. My birthday's next week. So we'll
Happy birthday.
Yeah,
I
we'll
celebrate all
celebrate.
month. I celebrate all month. I'll accept gifts all month.
Is there a email address or something that they could contact you in case they want to take up the class if they want to
Yes, it's my name, Jacqueline Thomas at gmail.com.
Awesome. Thank you, Miss Jackie. Be
Thank
blessed.
you for having me.
All right. You have a good one, okay?
You too.
All right. Bye.
Bye.